When I was a little kid, my dad used to tell me and my sister that he would always take care of us. He said those words like a promise carved in stone. My sister Grace, she believed him more than anyone. From the day she was born, Dad opened a savings account just for her college fund. He said by the time she turned 18, there would be enough money for her to become anything she wanted. Grace wanted to become a surgeon. But some promises are made only to hide the darkest secrets. And when the truth finally came out, my father used a weapon none of us ever expected. Before we dive into this story, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If you believe that families should protect each other, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Stay until the very end to see how my sister responded when our father threatened the unthinkable. Let me take you back to where it all began. Our family lived in a quiet suburb just outside Columbus, Ohio. It was the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew each other, where kids played in the streets until the sun went down, and where families gathered for barbecues on summer weekends. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. My father, Donald, was 52 years old and worked as a manager at an insurance company downtown. He wore pressed shirts and polished shoes, and he shook hands firmly with everyone he met. People respected him. They saw him as a responsible man, a devoted husband, a loving father. He played that role well, almost too well. My mother, Patricia, was 49 and worked as a nurse at the local hospital. She had a gentle soul, always putting others before herself. When it came to my father, she had a habit of looking the other way, of smoothing over conflicts instead of confronting them. I did not understand why until much later. Then there was me. I was 25 years old already, graduated from college, and working as a software engineer in Chicago. I had moved out a few years earlier, eager to start my own life. But I always stayed close to my family, especially to Grace. Grace was 18, the baby of the family, and she was extraordinary. From the time she was a little girl, she showed a kind of intelligence that made teachers stop and pay attention. She was not just book smart. She had curiosity, drive, and a heart that wanted to help people. By the time she was in middle school, she had already decided she wanted to become a doctor. Not just any doctor, but a surgeon. She wanted to save lives with her own two hands. Throughout high school, Grace worked harder than anyone I knew. She took advanced classes, joined the science club, volunteered at the hospital where our mother worked. She spent her summers doing research internships instead of hanging out at the pool like other kids her age. And when senior year came, all that hard work paid off. She got accepted into the pre-med program at Ohio State University. It was her dream come true. Our father could not stop talking about it. At family gatherings at church, at his office, he would tell anyone who would listen about his brilliant daughter who was going to become a surgeon. He beamed with pride whenever he mentioned her name. And he always brought up the college fund. That fund was something he had talked about for as long as I could remember. He opened it when Grace was just a newborn baby, he said. Every year he put money into it. He combined it with inheritance money from our grandparents on his side. By the time Grace graduated high school, he claimed the account held around $120,000, enough for 4 years of undergraduate studies and a good start on medical school. Grace believed every word. Why would she not? He was our father. He had promised to take care of her future, and she trusted him completely. She never asked to see bank statements. She never questioned the numbers. She simply believed that when the time came, the money would be there. I had my own college fund growing up, though it was smaller because our family was not as financially stable back then. Still, I understood the importance of what my father claimed to have built for Grace. It represented years of planning, years of sacrifice, years of a father keeping his word to his daughter, or so we thought. The first signs that something was wrong appeared about 6 months before Grace was supposed to start college. At the time, I did not think much of them. I was busy with my own life in Chicago, working long hours and building my career. But looking back now, the red flags were everywhere. It started with phone calls. My mother mentioned to me during one of our weekly conversations that my father had been taking calls in the garage late at night. When she asked who he was talking to, he said it was work-related. But his voice would get tense, and he would close the door behind him. She did not push further. She never did. Then came the mood changes. My father, who had always been the calm and steady presence in our home, started snapping at everyone over small things. He would lose his temper if dinner was 5 minutes late, or if someone left a light on in an empty room. My mother excused it as work stress. She said his company was going through changes, and he was under a lot of pressure. But the most troubling sign was how he started avoiding conversations about the college fund. Grace called me one evening in early spring, about 4 months before she was set to move into her dorm. She sounded confused. She told me that she had asked Dad about the fund because she wanted to understand how the payments would work. She needed to know how much would go toward tuition, how much toward housing, how much toward books and supplies. Simple questions that any college-bound student would ask. But instead of sitting down with her and going over the details, our father brushed her off. He said there was nothing to worry about. He told her the money was all there and that he would handle everything when the time came. When Grace pressed for more information, he changed the subject. When she asked to see the account balance, he said the bank was updating their online system and he could not access it right now. I told Grace not to worry too much. Parents sometimes handle finances in their own way, I said. Maybe Dad just wanted to surprise her with the exact amount later. She accepted that explanation, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. The doubt grew louder as summer approached. August arrived, and with it came the first tuition bill. Ohio State sent Grace a letter stating that her first semester payment was due, $23,000. The number was not a surprise. We all knew that quality education came with a price tag. But what happened next was something none of us expected. Grace showed the letter to our father over dinner. She was excited, nervous, ready to take this next big step in her life. She asked him when he could transfer the money so she could confirm her enrollment. He did not answer right away. He just stared at his plate for a long moment, then said he would take care of it next week. Next week turned into the week after. The week after became a series of excuses. The bank was having technical issues. There was a problem with the account that needed to be sorted out. He was waiting for some paperwork to clear. Grace started to panic. The deadline was approaching and she could not register for classes without paying the deposit. She called me one night in tears. She said something felt very wrong. She said Dad was acting strange, avoiding her eyes when she brought up the money, leaving the room whenever she mentioned college. I told her it was time to stop waiting for answers and start looking for them herself. The next morning, Grace did something she had never done before. She went to the bank alone. She brought her identification, her Social Security card, and the account number she had found on an old statement in our father's desk. She walked up to the teller window and asked to see the balance on her college fund account. The teller typed in the information, then paused. She looked at Grace with an expression that made my sister's heart stop. The teller said she was sorry, but there must be some mistake. She said the account had been closed 18 months ago. All the funds had been withdrawn. Grace asked her to check again. There had to be an error. $120,000 could not just disappear. But the teller confirmed what she had already said. The account was empty. It had been empty for a year and a half. Grace called me from the parking lot of the bank. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. Between gasps of air, she told me what she had learned. I felt my blood turn cold. Without thinking, I told her I was coming home. I booked the next flight to Columbus that same evening. I landed in Ohio just after 10 at night and drove straight to my parents' house. The lights were on in the living room, casting a yellow glow through the curtains. I sat in the driveway for a minute, trying to prepare myself for what was about to happen. But how do you prepare to confront your own father about stealing from your sister? I walked through the front door without knocking. The scene inside stopped me in my tracks. Grace was sitting on the couch, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked smaller than I remembered, curled up with her arms wrapped around herself, like she was trying to hold herself together. Our mother sat in the armchair across the room, her face pale and drawn. She would not look at anyone. She just stared at the floor like she wished it would swallow her whole. And there was our father. He sat in his usual chair, the one by the window where he read the newspaper every Sunday morning. But there was nothing calm about him now. His hands were shaking. His face was gray. He looked like a man who had been caught and knew there was nowhere left to run. I sat down next to Grace and took her hand. Then I looked at our father and asked him one simple question. Where is the money? He did not answer at first. The silence stretched out heavy and suffocating. Finally, he opened his mouth, and the truth came pouring out like poison from a wound. He told us that 18 months ago he discovered online gambling. It started innocently enough, he said. Just a few games here and there to pass the time. But the games became a habit, and the habit became an addiction. He started losing money, small amounts at first, then bigger ones. He told himself he would win it back. He always told himself that. When his own savings ran out, he started looking for other sources. That is when he remembered Grace's college fund. Just a temporary loan, he told himself. He would replace it before she ever needed it. No one would ever know. But the losses kept piling up. Every time he thought he was about to turn things around, he lost even more. The $120,000 disappeared piece by piece, bet by bet, until there was nothing left. And even then, he did not stop. He borrowed another $20,000 from loan sharks to try to win everything back. He lost that too. Now he owed dangerous people money. They were calling him, threatening him. That explained the late-night phone calls, the mood swings, the constant anxiety. He had dug himself into a hole so deep he could not see the way out. Grace listened to every word without interrupting. When he finished, she stood up slowly. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was steady. She asked him one question. For 18 years, you told me you were saving for my future. You made me believe that my dreams were safe in your hands. Was all of it a lie? Our father could not meet her eyes. He just stared at the floor, the same way our mother had been doing all night. Grace continued. She talked about all the nights she stayed up studying, believing her hard work would pay off, because her father had already taken care of the rest. She talked about her dream of becoming a surgeon, of saving lives, of making her family proud. She talked about how she had trusted him more than anyone else in the world. The tears were streaming down her face now, but her voice never wavered. She told him that he did not just steal money. He stole her trust. He stole her security. He stole 18 years of believing that she had a father who would protect her. Our mother finally spoke up. She begged Grace to calm down. She said we needed to find a solution as a family, that anger would not fix anything. But I noticed she did not seem surprised by any of this. She did not ask questions or demand explanations. And that is when I realized she had known. Maybe not everything, but enough. She had known something was wrong, and she had chosen to stay silent. Then our father did something that changed everything. He started crying, big heaving sobs that shook his whole body. He said he was sorry over and over again. He said he never meant to hurt anyone. He said he was weak, that he was sick, that he needed help. And then he said the words that still echo in my mind to this day. He looked at Grace with tears running down his face and said that if she could not forgive him, he did not want to live anymore. He said he would end his own life because he could not bear the shame of what he had done. He said that if his own children could not find it in their hearts to forgive him, then there was no point in going on. The room went completely silent. Our mother gasped and started begging him not to talk like that. She turned to Grace and me, pleading with us to tell him we forgave him, to make him feel better, to fix this. I recognized what was happening. This was not the first time our father had used this tactic. Whenever he faced consequences for his actions, whenever someone tried to hold him accountable, he would turn himself into the victim. He would threaten self-harm until everyone around him was so terrified that they gave in. It was emotional manipulation, plain and simple, and it had worked on our family for years, but not this time. Grace stood there for what felt like eternity. I watched her face, saw the emotions flickering across it like lightning in a storm. There was grief and anger and fear. But underneath all of that, I saw something else. I saw a young woman who was done being manipulated. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold as winter. She told our father to go ahead. She told him that if he wanted to end his life, that was his choice to make, not hers. She said she refused to be held hostage by his threats anymore. She said he had spent her entire life making her feel responsible for his emotions, and she was done carrying that weight. Our mother started crying, begging Grace to take it back. She said Grace did not mean it, that we were all just upset and needed to calm down. But Grace turned to our mother and asked a question that silenced the room. She asked how long our mother had known about the gambling. How long had she known that Grace's future was being gambled away? While she said nothing, our mother could not answer. Her silence told us everything we needed to know. Grace told our mother that by protecting Dad, she had betrayed her own daughter. She said a mother is supposed to protect her children, not sacrifice them to preserve a comfortable lie. I stood up and walked over to stand beside my sister. I told our father that what he needed was professional help, not forgiveness that he had not earned. I told him he needed to check into a rehabilitation program for gambling addiction. I told him he needed therapy to understand why he thought it was acceptable to manipulate his children with threats of suicide. I made it clear that those were his responsibilities, not ours. I turned to our mother and told her that she needed to stop enabling him. I said that covering up his mistakes was not love, it was harm. It hurt him by letting him avoid consequences, and it hurt us by forcing us to live in a web of lies. Then I looked at Grace and asked if she was ready to leave. She nodded. We walked out of that house together, leaving our parents sitting in the wreckage of everything they had built on deception. Grace stayed with me at a hotel that night. She did not sleep much. Neither did I. Over the following weeks, Grace and I worked together to figure out a new path forward. She made the difficult decision to defer her enrollment at Ohio State for one semester. It broke her heart to watch her classmates start their college journeys without her, but she needed time to sort out her finances. She applied for every scholarship and grant she could find. She spent hours writing essays about her dreams, her challenges, her determination to succeed, despite the obstacles in her path. She took a part-time job at a coffee shop near our mother's hospital, working early morning shifts before spending her afternoons filling out financial aid forms. I helped where I could. I gave her a loan to cover her first semester deposit, making it clear that she could pay me back whenever she was able, no pressure and no interest. It was money I had saved for a down payment on a house, but my sister's future mattered more. The results of Grace's hard work started coming in. She received a merit scholarship based on her outstanding high school record. She qualified for need-based grants once her financial situation was properly documented. The university's financial aid office worked with her to create a payment plan that made the remaining costs manageable. By January, Grace was walking onto the Ohio State campus as an official pre-med student. She was 5 months behind her original timeline, but she was there. And she had gotten there on her own terms, through her own effort, without relying on a single dollar from the father who had betrayed her. It has been 2 years since that terrible night in our parents' living room. A lot has changed since then. 3 months after we confronted him, our father checked himself into a rehabilitation program for gambling addiction. I would like to say it was because he truly understood the damage he had caused, but I think it was more because he realized no one was going to rescue him from consequences anymore. Either way, he completed the program and has not gambled since, as far as we know. Our mother started seeing a therapist on her own. She is beginning to understand the patterns of codependency that kept her silent for so long. She and I talk on the phone occasionally now. The conversations are awkward and careful, but they are happening. That is more than I expected. Grace and our father have not spoken much. She sends him a text on his birthday and at Christmas, but that is about it. She told me once that she does not hate him. Hate takes too much energy, she said. She just does not have room in her life for someone she cannot trust. As for Grace herself, she is thriving. She is now a sophomore in the pre-med program, maintaining excellent grades while working part-time in a research laboratory on campus. She made friends with other students who are also paying their own way through school. They understand each other in a way that students with fully funded educations never could. Grace told me recently that in some strange way she is grateful for what happened. Not grateful that our father stole from her, but grateful for what she discovered about herself in the aftermath. She learned that she is stronger than she ever knew. She learned that her dreams belong to her and no one can take them away unless she lets them. She learned that she is capable of building her own future with her own 2 hands. I think about that night often. I think about the moment when our father tried to use the ultimate manipulation, threatening his own life to escape accountability. And I think about Grace, 18 years old, and facing the destruction of everything she believed about her family, finding the courage to say no. She taught me something important that night. She taught me that loving someone does not mean accepting abuse. She taught me that setting boundaries is not cruelty, but self-respect. She taught me that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions, because that is the only way they will ever truly change. Our father stole Grace's college fund. He stole $120,000 and 18 years of trust. He tried to steal her power by making her responsible for his choices. But in the end, the only thing he really took was his place in her heart. And even that she is slowly reclaiming for herself. Grace is going to become a surgeon one day. I have no doubt about that. She will stand in an operating room and hold someone's life in her hands, and she will save them. Save. Not because her father paid for her education, but because she refused to let anyone steal her dream. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to set boundaries with someone you love? Have you ever had to choose between your own well-being and keeping the peace in your family? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and know they are not alone in their struggles. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more true stories about family healing and finding strength in difficult times. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message today, please share this video with them. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to Grace's story. I hope that wherever you are in your own journey, you remember that your dreams belong to you. No one can take them unless you let them. Take care of yourself, protect your peace, and never be afraid to stand up for what you deserve.